And so tonight we're talking about, as I said, functioning versus thriving. I've noticed that I keep interchanging how I end up talking about this. Sometimes I put functioning first, sometimes I put thriving first, and so that's interesting to me. So the first question is, are you functioning? And the answer to that is that functioning is where something is being inputted, there is an action, and then there's an output. And this is a concept we're very familiar with computer programming, with math functions, engineering, where there's an input, there's an action, chemistry, and then there's a result or an output. So when we say, somebody asks us, how are you doing? And we say, well, I'm functioning. That says that something's coming in, we're acting on that, and then something's going out. And one of the ways to really be conscious about this is that, what is it that's coming in? Is it stress? Is it stressful thinking? Is it being asked to do things, being directed or ordered to do things, and then we're acting or reacting to that, and then there's a certain output? When you think about going through a drive-through for a quick meal, when you think about going to the bank, there's an input that you have, there's an action that takes place, and then there's a result. And so when we just operate from that place of functioning, it's not a very sophisticated or resourced way of living necessarily. It's very simplistic. And in the case of people who are dealing with long-term stress or PTSD, this level of functioning sometimes just feels like surviving. So ways that we function. And I have some thoughts here that we think when we're just in that place of functioning. Nobody can tell I'm on the edge. We get so good at taking in the input, acting on it, and spitting something out that nobody can even tell we're on the edge. We tell ourselves we're working as best as we can, so functioning is good enough. We're one tiny step above surviving, and, we better be grateful for what we have. We experience this as just going through the motions, sort of on automatic pilot. We don't think about it. We don't feel about it. We just take whatever is coming in, be it thoughts, being it directives, being toxicity, dysfunction, whatever's coming in, we act and react, and then we spit something out in response. I'm accomplishing what's expected, which is going through the motions, putting forth some effort, faking it. Nobody can really tell that I'm on the edge. We often have sort of a attitude of take a number. I'll get to you when I can, whether that's at home with our family, whether that's in the workplace with patients, whether that's with friends. I'm doing the best I can. And then finally, just tell me what I'm supposed to do. So when we're coming from that place of just functioning, we're faking it. We're just trying to go through the motions. We want people to just tell me what you need, and I'll, give it to you. But it's not really coming from a place of happiness, joy, thriving. We're just making it. We're doing the best we can. Nobody can really tell. We're accomplishing what we think is expected. So some of the coping strategies that we have in this state of being, let's see here. We often people please. Just tell me what you need. We overcompensate. You know what? If that's what you say you need and you need it in triplicate, I'll give you 4 copies. We keep lists rather than feeling sort of organically organized or like we're in the flow. We have lists that we obsess about so that we can make sure we're meeting expectations and going through the motions. We pretend. We often pretend that we're better than we are, and that's a way of coping and keeping people at bay. We, more than anything, want to avoid conflict, and so we are conflict averse, and will put on the monosyllabic tone of voice in talking to people, our kids or whoever. We don't want any back talk. We don't want any conflict. We're trying to cope. We're functioning. Sometimes we're sarcastic, and that's a way of getting through it. We tend to minimize how we're really feeling, the toll that it's taking. And sometimes in that whole list keeping, organizing fashion that we obsess to make sure we're dotting our I's and crossing our T's, we micromanage. So we get into this people-pleasing, overcompensating, list-keeping, pretending, conflict avoidance, sarcastic, minimizing, micromanaging space. And that's the way we cope. And that is not called thriving. That's called functioning. If you're thriving, this is a list of some of what you experience. You feel as if you're being heard, that you're known. You have wider exposure. You feel like, you know, you fit in, like you're being listened to. There's more money, more resources. You're being seen. There's more profit, more media exposure. If that's, you know, in this case, media exposure might mean more popularity with patients, more buzz. You're not afraid to be visible. You're feeling welcome, like you have some leverage, like you're able to tap into your wisdom and use it in a way that not only results in your own exponential growth, but also that helps fuel growth in others. We're not afraid of attention. We're not any longer necessarily trading time for money. We're now really valuing ourselves, and it's not just about time, it's about who we are and what we're bringing. We can help more people, live on mission, find our tribe, have greater impact. So that's just a few things on this slide that I thought really represented quite well what thriving looks like. What are some of the adjectives that go with thriving? I think this slide was sort of designed for people that are not necessarily in the medical field, but we can still extrapolate those key themes that are true for all of us. Okay, let's see. So what holds us back? What keeps us at the level of being content to function? Well, one of the things I don't mention here that I want to take a moment to mention now, if we've come from a trauma background, whether that's when we were kids, and many of us have multiple trauma histories in our lives, where we had trauma as a kid, we had trauma in training or in education, we've had trauma in relationships, we've had trauma in the workplace. And I know some people are like, you know, I get so sick of hearing about it. And that's understandable, but it's also very true that when we start to get habituated in that environment of trauma, it can be really hard to get out of. So when you are finally at a level of functioning. If you've had extreme or complex PTSD, if you've had chronic anxiety, if you have had other mental health issues like depression, OCD, ADHD, other things that make your PTSD experience more complex, then sometimes just the level of functioning feels like it's enough. It's that whole beggars can't be choosers type of thing. Well, 6 months ago, I was hardly able to function. I wasn't able to practice medicine. I wasn't able to relate to my kids. I wasn't able to get out of bed. I had isolated and lost some friendships. So today, to be able to function, to be able to fake it and go through the motions, that's a step up for me. So I don't want to minimize the fact that being in a state of functioning isn't okay or isn't even desirable. Certainly, we need to go from a place of being constantly triggered and activated and in the full-blown PTSD or anxiety or depression state to functionality. And that feels like, hey, I just want to function for a while. And that's awesome. But there will come a time where functioning isn't enough. We're designed as human beings to want more. And so we are going to be in a state or find ourselves moving toward a state of wanting more, feeling restless, not being content. Just functioning and coping isn't enough. But what holds us back is often some of our fears and some of the beliefs that we have that sabotage us. So we tell ourselves it's too hard. It's just too hard. I've worked so hard to get to a point of functioning, to now again be focusing on self-improvement, self-development. It just feels like too much. I mean, I want a break. And so we tell ourselves it's too hard. We're afraid. We're afraid that what if we lose our footing, that we lose ground, that we aren't able to get to a place of thriving. And so when we backslide way past functionality back into the zone of high stress and depression. So that's one of our fears. We worry about what other people will think because we don't want to leave people behind. And sometimes getting to a place of thriving really is threatening to those that are close to us. We tell ourselves that others are suffering. It's like the starving children in another country. There are others suffering. And so I'm not going to sort of one up or have these, lofty aspirations for myself because there are plenty of other people suffering. I just need to be content with what I have. But that's really resistance. That's really being afraid of moving forward. We want to be humble. We don't know how. We don't believe in thriving. It's good enough. What's wrong with this country right now is that people want too much. It wouldn't be fair if I start thriving and my neighbor isn't. If I'm making a really good living and my child is struggling, then it's not fair. I want to be realistic, and maybe it's unrealistic to expect that any life should be one based on joy and happiness and thriving. It's scary that things might change. Relationships might change. What we do for a living might change. Who we invite into the inner circle may change. It might hurt. Growth can sometimes be uncomfortable at its best and at its worst, painful. And sometimes we just don't feel brave enough. After all I've been through, after all that I've done in my life, I don't know if I have it to do this again. So this is the list of excuses, of resistances, of fears that hold us back. And I think it's an important list to look at because some of these reside in all of us. Several of these things on the list reside in me, and I have to change my self-talk and be very vigilant about what's the narrative that I'm hearing today. Who's that internalized parent, and what is she saying to me? Because I don't want to be held back. What does thriving look like? It looks like, these are some of the to be or not to be statements. Thriving is to flourish, to expand, to venture forth, to be bold, to be gentle, to be happier, to be fulfilled, to be free, to be whole. I think that's an important list. And so when you get this recording later, you might want to write some of these down. I'm going to go through them quickly. To flourish, to expand, to venture forth, to be bold, to be gentle, to be happier, to be fulfilled, to be free, to be whole. Thriving individuals feel they are growing. So creating the shift from functioning to thriving, you can do it. We all can. And it doesn't have to all happen overnight. We can take some time. And these are some of the strategies to create the shift. First and foremost, put yourself first. You're never going to get from functioning to thriving if you're other focused, if you're putting everyone ahead of yourself. Really getting to a place of thriving requires that you invest time, energy, and resources in yourself. Decide that you're going to under-deliver to others for a while, because right now your focus needs to be on yourself. It's okay to back off a little bit with everyone in your life and under-deliver. And what that means for many of us who are high achievers and very conscientious people is that we're used to over-delivering. And so putting ourselves first and under-delivering is really a necessary experience for us to come from one extreme to more of that center place. Organize, don't obsess. That's with regard to keeping track of the lists, sort of getting into this OCD way of operating so that you're functioning and you're functioning at a level that allows you to pass. The antidote for that is, rather than creating lists and obsessing and going over your lists and making sure and people pleasing, is to organize. Just organize in a way that you don't have to obsess about. And for some people, that means just having a big picture in their mind and holding that vision and then being in the flow. For other people who are more detailed, it may look a little different. And if you have questions about that, email me or text me and we'll talk about that more. Be real, don't pretend. This is not a time to fake it till you make it. This is a time to really decide that the goal is moving from coping and functioning to thriving and flourishing and expanding and being joyful, and that requires being real. So when you're having a bad day, admit you're having a bad day. Don't pretend it's something else. Don't go through the motions. Not only will you expand and grow and deepen from the experience of vulnerability, but others around you will as well. And you will get ever closer to thriving. It sounds counterintuitive. It's like, well, if I hide it, if I pretend, I don't want to bother other people with my problems. But it's actually the opposite. The more real you are, the faster you get to that place of joy and thriving. Assert yourself. Don't be conflict avoidant. Be willing to, especially since you're putting yourself first, you're under-delivering, you have some more resources available, you're organized, you're being real. It's okay to assert yourself. Tell the truth. The biggest travesty, I think, for people that have experienced trauma is that we're often told it's our fault, or we misinterpret if we're really young and we believe it's our fault. And so we tell ourselves for years and years and years, well, you know, my boss wouldn't have yelled at me if I was more organized, or, you know, my husband and I wouldn't fight if, you know, I was a better communicator, if I was this, that, or the other thing. But, you know, the truth is you're enough. You're perfect. We all make mistakes. Don't let other people gaslight you or shame and blame you. There's no room for shaming and blaming in a life that's thriving. Instead, tell the truth. That the truth sometimes requires accountability, both for ourselves and others. But accountability is different than blame, shame, gaslighting, allowing our traumatized selves, those dissociative parts that we've talked about before, to hear the truth from that strong core self that is, we're enough. It's not all our fault, and we need to hold others accountable. And then finally, if we do all of these things, we're going to trust ourselves more. If we put ourselves first, we underdeliver to others, we organize without obsessing, we're real, we're assertive, we tell the truth, then those fractured parts will begin to trust this core self more and more and more. And that's called integration, because then we become more and more and more whole. So I always go to this slide just to reinforce that post-traumatic stress is real, that when we have it, we have flashbacks, which are flooding of memories or feelings associated with the trauma. We tend to want to avoid in order to protect ourselves. We can find ourselves in a state of arousal and reactivity where we're hypersensitive and everything sets us off. It can affect our cognition, our short and long-term memory. We can feel depressed. We can have issues around PTSD, OCD, depression, and it adversely affects our mood, where we don't feel like we're always able to self-regulate because we're reactive or we're vacillating between extremes. And so, you know, when the PTSD rears its head, to be compassionate with yourself. Remember that this is your journey and that there are resources, and inspire yourself.